4 exhaust pipes. That's what BMW wants you to notice first about this X2 M35i. They're proudly displayed, hinting at serious performance, and you'd expect nothing less from something wearing an M badge, right? But pop the hood, and what do we find? Not a rowdy BMW inline 6, not a thundering V8, but rather a 4-cylinder. That's right, 1 exhaust tip per cylinder. So is this BMW playing dress up with their compact crossover, or is there something genuinely special happening here? I've spent the week with this X2 M35i to see if those exhaust pipes are writing checks that this engine can actually cash. What's it like? Buckle up, my friends. Let's go for a drive.
I'm your host, Brian Makse Racer, lover of driving fast, fun things, and on this channel, you get reviews for drivers from drivers. Now, this X2 is all new. BMW calls it a Sport Activity Coupe, but this is the one to get. It is the M35i. It's the most powerful, has M badges everywhere. And before we get into what it's like to drive, let's have a look at it in a little more depth. For 2025,
it's gotten a little bigger, a little wider, completely revised suspension kinematics, and the 2-liter turbo is completely beefed up. It gets a stronger crankshaft, piston cooling channels that could have come from a race car, and most telling of all, main bearing components borrowed directly from BMW's latest straight-six engines. The 2-liter 4-cylinder has a single twin-scroll turbocharger, makes 312 horsepower from 5,750 to 6,500 RPM, and 295 pounds of torque from 2,000 to 4,500 RPM. Fun fact, with 156 horsepower per liter, this engine is more densely packed than a Spirit Airlines flight on Thanksgiving weekend. The transmission is a 7-speed dual clutch. It is all-wheel drive, of course, and there's a mechanical limited slip diff at the front. Steering's electrically assisted with variable assist, adaptive dampers with additional valves that are active on the rebound stroke, M Sport brakes with blue calipers. They're 4-piston at the front, single piston at the rear. Wheels and tires are 20s or optional 21s. This one came fitted with 21s, but for winter mode, we're on a -2 setup with some 19s. Curb weight is 3,840 pounds, and in other markets, towing capacity is 4,000 pounds, but in North America, BMW doesn't talk about towing with X2s.
Did you know that 80% of you are not subscribed? Yes, it's true. 80% of you are not subscribed. I checked the data. So if you like the content on this channel, do me a solid, hit that subscribe button, make sure you like this, and if you want to support the channel, please hit up our merch store. Links here, links below. Lots of great stuff for driving enthusiasts like us, including our very popular line of Save the Manuals merch. Now back to your regularly scheduled episode.
behind the wheel, it's purely a BMW driving experience. These seats are deeply bolstered, highly adjustable, and extremely comfortable. I've got a great relationship to the pedals and to the steering wheel. Speaking of the steering wheel, it's an M-style wheel with a thicker rim. It encourages you to have your hands in 9 and 3. Yes, there are shift paddles on the back of the wheel. And of course, we got a ring at the top of the steering wheel just in case you get all silly and start drifting with your X2 M35i. I can't say enough about this driver's seat. As I mentioned, highly adjustable, very BMW in character because it's incredibly sportive and incredibly comfortable. And I think just about anybody can find a comfortable seating position here. We do have a big screen in front of us as well as a heads-up display. The instrument cluster, highly legible in all kinds of lighting conditions. Love the heads-up display, love the way it displays information. The infotainment system is BMW's latest. I do find them a little bit more complex than what we actually need. I run it on wireless CarPlay, works just fine in that regard. Speaking of wireless phones, there's a wireless charger here. I just leave my phone there. It's great to keep it out of the way. In terms of ergonomics, it's all very modern BMW. What that means is the climate controls are built into the screen now. Thankfully, they're easily accessible. On the steering wheel, we've got the adaptive cruise controls as well as some secondary controls for the audio system, for example. What's a little unusual for BMW, what they've done done for this X2 is this whole floating armrest idea. Now, floating in this case doesn't mean it's actually levitating using German witchcraft, although at this price point that wouldn't surprise me. Instead, it's a suspended design that looks modern while housing the shifter and other controls. What it does do, however, creates space underneath for storing items you'll immediately forget about and then panic search for 3 months later. Where are my sunglasses, my wallet, my will to live after telling my wife about another mechanical watch? Oh, probably underneath the floating armrest. Just look there. With respect to visibility, there are some compromises here. Sitting here looking forward, no problem at all. But the way they have arranged these mirrors, because I drive in the city, I'm always looking for pedestrian cyclists that are a little closer to the vehicle, and these mirrors kind of obscure them to a certain degree, especially in the city. Out here in the open road, no problem whatsoever. Now, looking out that rear window, it's just this tiny bit of glass we're looking through when we're on the move here. Thankfully, when we're parking, this has the latest parking tech. It'll park itself. It's got a 360-degree bird's eye view that displays on the screen. So parking this is an absolute breeze. And in fact, the first time I parallel parked this, I simply let the car do the work. It's that easy, no learning curve. With respect to spaciousness, there is an abundance of space in these first 2 rows. Here, lots of room for you and your passenger, lots of adjustment in the seat, so anybody can get comfortable here. In that second row, surprisingly, the shape of the roofline doesn't compromise headroom, so I'm quite happy in that second row. Now, the hatch on this X2, we have to talk about for a couple of reasons. Yeah, in terms of its cargo carrying ability, no problem whatsoever. The seats split fold, no issues there. However, for me, in my garage, I have a decent amount of height, but because of the shape of that hatch and how it articulates, I have to set maximum height a little bit lower. And what that means is that I have walked into the corners and the latch of the hatch several times in this week with the X2. And let me tell you, every time I've run into it, it's been more painful than reading comments about my seating position. Every sport activity coupe should have launch control, don't you think? Let's give it a try. Yep, quick. Does all the right things. The dual clutch shifts quickly, fantastic, and of course they've tuned some exhaust pops in through the system. I think it happens a little bit on the outside and a little bit through the sound system, but at least from this driver's seat, sounds absolutely fantastic. I think with the exhaust sound, what they went for was something a little more aggressive than the Mercedes-AMG GLA 35 and something a lot less antisocial than a Golf R with an aftermarket exhaust. It's the automotive equivalent of raising your voice without actually yelling. Top speed's 150 miles an hour, but you do need the performance tire option, which this one is spec'd with. Acceleration isn't quite as face-melting as a supercar or a M5, for example, but it is genuinely impressive for something shaped like a slightly squashed small SUV. And overall, it's quick enough to embarrass hot hatches at any given stoplight, and certainly fast enough to keep you on a first-name basis with your local law enforcement. The Sport Boost function is enabled when we pull on this left shift paddle for more than a second, and it's BMW's version of pressing the Make Cargo Whoosh button. When it's engaged, it sharpens throttle response, stiffens the dampers, and makes the exhaust note a little bit louder, because nothing says I'm a serious driver like artificially enhanced engine noises. While I'm happy to talk about BMW's inline 6s and V8s all day long simply because of the way they make power and torque, this 4-cylinder is very much in the same vein as BMW's other engines. The way it makes power, the way it makes torque, very, very similar. Peak power way up high in the rev range, and peak torque right in the middle of the rev range where you need it. Whether it's a combination of refinement or cabin sound isolation. You really don't get much four-cylinder noise inside the cabin at all, if ever. And if you didn't know this was powered by a four-cylinder, your ears certainly couldn't tell. Now, we do know where this platform comes from, and we recently drove the new Mini Countryman John Cooper Works, and yes, this uses a little bit more front-wheel drive architecture, and it's only very rarely does that front-wheel drive character show up, and it's only in unusual situations. Like, for example, at lower speeds where you're asking for lots of power, there's just a fraction of a delay before all of the torque gets delivered to the rear axle. Just like this being a four-cylinder, you probably couldn't tell. This being front-wheel drive-based architecture with an all-wheel drive driveline, you really can't tell that it is front-wheel drive architecture by the way it puts down power and torque. In terms of drive modes, there are effectively three. My favorite, of course, is the sport mode, and that's because it gets the entire drivetrain all excited, poised, and ready to go to attack the road, attack some corners, whatever the case is. There's a big gap between sport mode and this efficient mode. Totally changes the character of this M35i. As much as I love the 7-speed dual clutch when we're on the move, it is smooth, it is quick, does all of the right things. Of course, look, the shift paddles here. But one situation where I don't like it is where the stop-start function is enabled and the auto-hold function is enabled. Because I drive in the city, love using the auto-hold, but when I'm leaving from a stop and the engine is shut down, tip in on that throttle and there's a bit of a delay before the engine fires, the brakes release, and we get some forward movement. As of late, it doesn't matter what kind of BMW I'm driving, but I'm impressed with the suspensions and everything, and this X2 is no exception. It's a brilliant blend of comfort and the kind of support and sporting calibrations you need for the corners. And speaking of corners, I think we're going to find some. So let's see how all of this comes together. Brakes are nice and strong, very clear. You definitely feel the taller center of gravity in this X2, that's for sure, but the suspension's doing a fantastic job of soaking up the bumps and keeping the tires in contact with the road. And you're definitely reminded that you are driving a crossover-like vehicle or a sport activity coupe, as BMW calls it, in that tough corner here, off camera on the exit. Let's see how it does. Wow, very impressive, very impressive. Power gets to the ground, it tracks a perfect line. Very impressed with how it all comes together. Suspension does a fantastic job, even here in sport mode. Wow, steering is precise and allows you to place this X2 on the road with a level of accuracy I wish I had when it came to estimating how much money I spent being a racing driver over the years. There's a very limited amount of feel that comes through the steering wheel. Surprisingly, there's a decent amount of chassis feel. You kind of tell what's going on at all four contact patches, which is a rare thing in a crossover, so color me impressed. And because, of course, we've got those fancy red brake calipers, they're awesome. No, just kidding. BMW does excellent brakes. Those are 4-piston calipers on the front. They do a fantastic job, and brake, feel, control, modulation, and power are all the highlight. Another highlight of the brake pedal is a little bit more pedal effort required, which is exactly what you want in a performance-oriented vehicle. Most crossovers in the segment have a softer pedal. This one's nice and firm. Love the way it works. Allows me to control the attitude of this X2 a little bit better.
How do you spec yours? Well, this is always an interesting question to ponder, especially in the land of M badges. What you are looking at is a 2025 BMW X2 M35i in skyscraper gray metallic with the red, or coral red as it's called in Canada, Viganza interior. Among other things, this one is fitted with the M Sport Pro package, the Premium package, and Driving Assistance Pro package. In the US, base price is $52,300, and as tested, this is $59,100 $150. In Canada, base price is $60,400, and as tested, this is $71,800, and these prices are before freight, local taxes, fees, etc. It's worth mentioning that the M Sport Pro package adds those red brake calipers because nothing says I'm a serious driver like red brake calipers. Now, delving into speccing any BMW, especially with an M badge, is an exercise in psychological warfare. You start with a reasonably priced base model, then BMW strategically bundles desirable features into packages that seem like good values until you realize you need multiple packages to get you all the features you want. Oh good, you want a heated steering wheel and parking assistance? That'll be 2 separate packages, please. And heck, the digital cockpit professional sounds essential. After all, who wants an unprofessional cockpit? Then there are the standalone options like the 21-inch wheels for $600, which seems almost reasonable until you remember they'll cost twice that to replace after encountering your first serious pothole. The configurator should come with a warning label. Caution, may cause spontaneous justification of unnecessary expenditures. Seriously though, I really appreciate the way this particular X2 M35i is spec'd, save for one thing, but all of the features, all of the options, I use all of them, and they are very useful day to day and when you're enjoying your time behind the wheel of this X2. The one thing I would not do is get this skyscraper gray metallic. This is a perfect color for this part of the world because everybody buys their BMWs in boring colors. I would find something much more interesting because the body lines of this X2 definitely will show off an interesting color. The skyscraper gray metallic may be fashionable, may be easy to live with, but it's pretty darn boring.
After spending a week with this X2 M35i, there's not a day that's gone by that I haven't missed spotting those 4 exhaust tips.
But I've come to an important realization, and they're not entirely for show. The 2-liter might be small, relatively speaking, but BMW's engineers have extracted 312 horsepower, that's 156 horsepower per liter, well into supercar territory. And those 4 exhaust tips, thankfully, they've tuned the exhaust system to deliver a little bit of character and attitude.
This exists in a strange purgatory of BMW's own creation. Not quite fish, not quite fowl.
Not quite an SUV, not really a hot hatch, and definitely not a traditional coupe, despite what BMW's marketing department insists. But after a week behind the wheel, I've developed a grudging respect for this automotive chimera. It drives with enthusiasm that belies its practical shape, it corners with composure that defies its ride height, and accelerates with some urgency that makes you forget you're in something with utility in its classification.
Would I recommend it? Well, that depends. If you're a driving enthusiast who is constrained but in practical realities of modern living and have about $60,000 burning a hole in your pocket, then yes, you'll find genuine joy in this machine. And fun fact, I just learned that BMW X2 M35i owners are 73% more likely to say it's not just a crossover when describing this vehicle to their disinterested neighbors. Thanks for hanging out with me today and having a look at this 2025 BMW X2 M35i. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, you're not new, you know what to do. Smash the subscribe button, turn on your notifications, like this video, and as always, sharing is caring, so please share this with your friends, especially on Reddit, because on Reddit, they really need to see reviews for drivers from drivers. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you want to support the channel, please set up our merch store. Links here, links below. Lots of great stuff for driving enthusiasts like us, including our very popular line of Save the Manuals merch, and BMW still leaves some fine manuals. Thanks, BMW. Anyway, thanks again for watching. We'll see you again next time. And remember, cars don't understeer by themselves, not even BMW X2s. And since you've hung around this long, well, have a look at something I enjoyed at the other end of the SUV spectrum at BMW, the B7 Alpina. That thing is impressive. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you again next time.